What are some of the reasons you cut ties with former friends? When they try to take advantage of me, I generally try to help when I can, especially if it means reconnecting with a close friend of mine. Freshman year of college, I was texting my best friend from high school. He was saying how he just dropped out and was looking for work or a new college to attend. Told him I would help him look for a nursing program for him. We kept in touch for a bit, and then that first summer break he texted me asking for an update on the nursing program. Told him I hadn't found anything because I didn't have that much time between baseball, physical therapy, and summer classes. When I asked how the search was going for him, he told me he didn't have time for that shit and that I needed to look more. I have no problem trying to help someone out, but that was just too much. She and her husband were renting my basement after they got married. Fully finished basement with bedroom and bathroom for $200 a month. They both worked full time, but never paid rent on time, constant messes in the kitchen and garage. Eventually I asked them to move out within 90 days. A month before the move out date they gave me a sob story about not having enough for a security deposit on an apartment. I gave them the last month free to help. While I was on vacation they went out and bought a freaking boat. Not a rowboat, a Mastercraft ski boat 2 years old. They still had not moved out by that point. After calling and confronting them, they quickly hung up on me and blocked me on social media and their phones. 10 years of considering her my sister and even living with her for 4 years evaporated with one phone call. We haven't spoken since. They, 28 and 30, live in her parents' basement now, and I still get collection notices for them in my mail. I had this best friend in elementary school. He had a few quirks, but we were inseparable. As we grew up, he started having more and more mental related issues. Depression and anxiety and a host of other things. He never wanted to go outside to play or really do much of anything. Then the issues started getting worse. It seemed like I was talking him out of suicide almost every time I saw him. What was worse was that I was dealing with a very close family member who had just committed suicide themselves not even a month before. This was almost a daily thing and went on for months. One day I just snapped. I couldn't do it anymore. It was getting to the point that being around him was affecting my mental health. So around 7th grade, I stopped talking to him. I felt guilty at the time, but no matter what I did or said to him seemed to help him. It was almost like he was feeding off the concern we had for him. I'm much older now, and luckily I guess he kinda grew out of some of the problems he was having. Or perhaps he got a good therapist. He's doing well now last I heard, but we have so little in common now I don't think we could ever really be friends again. I found out he was into child pornography. This guy was one of the first friends I made when I moved to Texas in 1990. We went to high school together, played games together, had adventures together. We worked at the same places, banged the same girls, played the same games, watched the same movies. We drank together, fought together, even got arrested together. He wasn't my friend. He was my brother. In the early 2000s we became roommates, 2 out of 5 people in a 3-bedroom townhome. Because of his technical acumen he handled the household IT. He'd set up a network for all of our machines and even a small media server. I had a hard drive failure. I bought a replacement, and while installing my OS I went to play some Warcraft on his computer. He'd given me permission to do so, along with the password to his machine. I saw an oddly named folder on his desktop, so out of curiosity I clicked on it. Child porn. Lots of child porn. Lots of child porn. The video I clicked on had a child, no more than 5 years old, being raped. I called the cops. He was arrested. He was charged. He was convicted. He was my brother. He was one of my closest friends. He was one of the few people I trusted. I haven't spoken to him in nearly 2 decades. We were 12 years old, and she wanted me to be sexually active for some reason, probably because she was. I had a boyfriend at the time, but it was a middle school boyfriend. We would hold hands and we kissed a total of 3 times. Anyway, my friend was spending the night at my house, and out of the blue, she death gripped one of my boobs and said, "You're going to give him a blowjob, and I'm not going to let go until you say you will." I was awkwardly laughing at first, because I thought she was just joking, but she kept her grip, and it started to hurt. I pretend laughed and said I would. Of course I didn't. I only did it to make her stop. But after that, I really knew I could not be her friend anymore. She was my best friend at the time, so it was really awkward when my parents would ask me why I wasn't hanging out with her and that I should be nice to her. I didn't have the courage to tell them what she had done, so instead I just got mad at them for talking about her. She had a kid at some point in high school. No idea what she's up to now. I still have her blocked on Facebook, even though we haven't spoken in many years. My old high school friends had a way of making things about them and taking advantage of me when it suited them. In a way, it wasn't a surprise considering they grew up pretty rough and they had come to know that being selfish was a way to get things out of people. My issue was that they were never the givers. They just took. I can't tell you how many borrowed items I never got back, how many car rides they asked me for without paying me for gas, how many times they begged me to buy them things for holidays/birthdays and conveniently forgetting to give me so much as a card in exchange. The last straw was over my 21st birthday. I asked in advance if they wanted to make any plans to go out with me. Party bus. They replied, "Alright, sounds cool. How much can y'all contribute?" Turns out they expected me to fully fund the bus so they could party on it. I remember being so hurt that I wasn't going to have a party thrown by caring friends. I was just expected to be a booze ticket. I went out to a wing place with my parents and had an apple cider martini as my first drink. I spent time with the people I could trust to care about me and put a huge distance on the jerks who I knew couldn't. My best friend moved her wedding date forward 4 months so her Christian fiancé and her could live together sooner in the eyes of the Lord. She moved her wedding date to 4 days after my due date, and due to it being the birth of my first child I couldn't guarantee what state I'd be in, so I apologized and declined being her maid of honor after explaining my concerns and stating she deserved a better maid of honor. To which her family began to call me selfish for not putting their daughter first over my body and unborn baby. I realized she played victim and twisted the story and told them a completely different reason. Good friend of mine got too into party drugs and then started doing a bit of selling. Before I knew what he was up to, I ended up having 2 incidents when out with him. One time we were taken to a back room by bouncers who tried to shit us up, and then not long after, I was followed by some other dealers whose territory my mate had sold in, and I was given a proper pasting with a baseball bat or similar blunt weapon. Had to turn my back on him at that point, but within the next year, he had given up drugs and the party scene in general, and I was back in contact with him. He is now about 10 years clear of it, and a rare success story of someone who goes off the deep end with drugs and starts selling, and manages to turn it around. In the end I was constantly walking on eggshells with her. I was afraid of her getting mad at me, but it was almost unavoidable, because she was so short-tempered. If anything didn't work out the way she had wanted it to, it wasn't good. Her mood dropped, and I was her punching pillow. Always tried to cheer her up again, but it would never work. She'd only keep on complaining. But if I had any issues, anything I wanted to talk about, she wouldn't care. Lastly, I noticed how much we had grown apart, how different our lives were. I'm happy I don't talk to her anymore. She always pulled me down with her. Was friends with Sarah since high school, and when we got to college she decided she didn't want to be friends with our friend, Jane, anymore. So instead of telling Jane that, she decided to ghost her. Still, Jane realized she wasn't invited to Sarah's birthday and confronted me about it. There was no way I could lie without it being obvious, so I told her the truth. Then I immediately told Sarah that I had to tell Jane the truth. She was very understanding, said she didn't care, and that she was happy it was out. Then last minute she cancelled her birthday party saying she was sick. I said to her that I was sorry I wasn't going to see her and wished her a speedy recovery. Then the night of her birthday rolls around, and I see on Facebook our mutual friends are posting about being at Sarah's birthday. She was never sick, she just uninvited me and a couple of other friends who had ties to Jane. I was so hurt and angry at this person I had always considered one of my good friends. I knew after that I would never be able to trust or want to be around someone like that. So I never talked to her again. When she became freakishly obsessed with saving me from a bunch of shit that was happening in my life, convinced herself I was an alcoholic who had fallen off the wagon. When she found out I was having a few drinks one night, constantly made passes at me, even though she was in her 40s. I'm in my 20s, and wouldn't shut up about how I secretly was scamming her. All of this was bad enough, but she also hated my best friend, and tried to talk shit about him to me. The first time, I tore her a new one, and told her in no uncertain terms, that she never said that again. When she did it a second time, I cut her off there and then, after tearing her a second new one. I'm in the process of cutting ties with a friend, and it's super hard, because despite telling me we have nothing in common anymore, and gets bored when we catch up, she still hits me up wanting advice, or wanting to talk. This girl and I were super close in high school, and I became her friend purely because she was becoming bully fodder as the new kid at school with some weird quirks that were going to isolate herself if she didn't have a friend. It's been 5 years since we've graduated, and she tells me all the time that she doesn't look back to her high school years at all, but boy, does she like to talk about them. In our group, she will bring up things from 7+ years ago, always framing me as the stupid one, and her as the all-knowing one who knew better. She will talk about my past boyfriends, and how we used to act. She will go back and like embarrassing statuses from 7 years ago, just to bring them up on my page. And it's not an on this day thing either. She will literally sit and scroll through my page. When we are out, she often picks on my clothing. While she's dressed ridiculously, I will be in jeans and a t-shirt on a good day. This girl might wear overalls, and has told me that weddings are stupid and misogynist, but wants an invite to mine, probably to tell everyone this the whole time. She says my partner she's met once has a rich kid vibe, when he was nothing but hospitable. She will tell me often she doesn't need our group of friends anymore, because she has her own, and how annoying they all are, and how she was glad to leave them, when in reality we all got tired of her acting, as if she's the greatest thing since sliced bread and left. I'm the only one she has left, and even I'm sick of her. When I saw my friend chase after someone with a pocket knife in his hand, I had known Juan ever since I was in kindergarten, and we were really close growing up. We had sleepovers pretty much every weekend, and he joined me for my family camping trips every summer. I was an only child, and he was like a brother to me. Then a bunch of us were transferred out of our grade school by our parents in the 6th grade because they were unhappy with the administration and felt we could learn better elsewhere. Even though I lived on the south side of Chicago, I ended up in a school on the north side with another friend of mine, Manny, while Juan ended up going to a school closer to his house. Juan and I still hung out sometimes, but we started drifting apart more and more. I could tell his new school was changing him, and by 8th grade he was part of a local crew. At the time I was really into graffiti and rap, so even though things were changing, we still found things we had in common. The last time I saw him, I was at his graduation party. After the whole family thing was over, we were hanging out with some of his friends from the neighborhood to smoke some weed. Then Juan and I decided to go for a walk. I had a backpack full of spray paint, so we went to the train tracks by his house to hit up some trains and walls. I put up my name, and he put up his gang's tags. As we are bombing this one wall, we hear a voice from below. There is some guy yelling up at us. I don't remember what he said, but it really pissed Juan off. I had never seen him like this before. He was like a completely different person. He started running after this guy, and out of instinct, I just followed him. The other guy bolted, and he chased after him, and I chased after him. After a few minutes, he lost him and stopped, and I was finally able to catch up to him. He still had that crazy, angry look in his eye, but then I also noticed he had a knife in his hand. It was then I knew that I did not belong there. He started talking about getting a couple of other people to find him. Apparently they had some beef with the guy, which is why he was so angry. I convinced him to let it go for now and go back and smoke some more weed to chill out. We did, and I crashed at his house, just as I had done for so many years. But after that night I wanted nothing to do with the lifestyle he was getting involved in, and even though we still talked on the phone sometimes, we never hung out again after that. After we started high school, we lost touch completely. I still thought of him a lot and wondered whatever happened to him, so I would Google him sometimes, but never had any results. It wasn't until last year I finally found him when I used his middle name in a search. There were about 6 or 7 different mugshots from his various visits to county jail, mostly on possession charges. It made me sad, but at the same time I was glad I didn't go down the same path. Like and subscribe for more Reddit videos.